Hi there, it's Memory from Friends Abroad Relationship School. I have a very interesting topic today, and I've been meaning to share this topic for a while now. It's a topic on spiritual bypassing. It is a very, I must say and repeat, a very powerful topic, and I'm going to dive right in to this topic. So, spiritual bypassing was coined by John Welwood in 1980s, and he termed it a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. And that is very powerful because I think many of us will identify a type of spiritual bypassing that we apply in our daily lives. So, what is it that we need to talk about? We'll talk about the signs of spiritual bypassing, and I'll also share with you about 14 types of spiritual bypassing, as well as what we can do to overcome or minimize spiritual bypassing, because it's very important, because many of us are struggling with this problem. So what happens is, this spiritual bypassing is an attitude which makes us look good on the outside, but not how we feel on the inside. So there's a conflict between the inside and the outside. We use spirituality to suppress, avoid, or escape from uncomfortable life issues. And what might happen is we might be struggling with a loss of a loved one, a relationship breakup, a family problem, and also maybe childhood abuse, loneliness, self-esteem, self-sabotage behaviors, fear, mental or emotional health issues, or any other problems that life presents. And then what we do is we apply spirituality as a feigned strength instead of using resilience. So we use spirituality to become a sort of support to distract these life's tumors. And it is very dangerous to use spirituality to bypass the darker elements of our lives. And when used as a defense mechanism, it actually deters us from developing true courage, authenticity, and wholeness, and qualities that refine our souls. So that's important to identify and to pick up on this journey, because it is a topic that many people, even in self-development, are not aware of. So what are the signs of spiritual bypassing? Well, let me tell you this. Number one, not paying attention to or caring about anything and convincing yourself that everything will just work out. Avoiding anger to look like all is well. You devalue your feelings versus loading of spiritual principles. You can numb your emotions or repress them. You overemphasize the positive, that positive movement. Let's be positive. I don't like negatives, something like that. But life consists of both positive and negative. And exhibiting frequent anger also can be a problem, because you are not addressing the underlying issues. Being overly compassionate, too understanding, too, all that, it's too extreme. You are human, you have emotions, and you get triggered. Address that. and the judgment of others for feeling negative emotions. We are not talking about enabling people who are always complaining here, but judging each time someone feels negative emotions. But what we say is that deal with them, sift them, rather than ignore your feelings or say, oh, you keep complaining. And you can identify that there's a problem and give them strategies or helpful resources to support themselves instead. Blind compassion, which can show up as misguided tolerance of abusive behavior to avoid confrontation. And this is very common in codependency, where people accept or tolerate abuse from a partner. Being overly nice by practicing false humility, false flattery, and inability to say no. That is people pleasing. And this new age thinking of, oh, everything is positive, light and love and light all the time. You got to get into love and light after addressing the shadow, because there is duality. Believing you are more enlightened than others, thereby developing spiritual arrogance. Underdefined or overdefined personal boundaries, which are really make you really stuck, or they are merged with somebody, that can be enmeshment or too harsh boundaries. Being self-righteous and claiming that you are enlightened, and being overly idealistic. One-sided spirituality, when you devalue the personal relative to the impersonal, spiritual. So you are focused on, we do this, in our spirituality, but you don't consider an individual holistically. And judging your shadow side and not addressing it, and addressing it as wrong, rather than addressing what is actually underneath that emotion or that side of you. And skewed development, and that's a very interesting one for me, because we have cognitive intelligence far ahead of emotional, moral, and spiritual intelligence. And we have so many people who are like that, like people we call academics or scholars, or people who say I'm very intelligent or I'm very logical. You might find that they are very cognitively intelligent, but they might actually struggle with emotional intelligence and moral intelligence and spiritual intelligence at its deepest. Harsh self-judgment and grandiosity, feeling like you're more enlightened than others, and underdeveloped compassion or empathy, not being attuned to self and then to others. Over-exaggerated detachment, being overly passive or impersonal observer in the periphery. Yes, we need to detach, but how much? But some of these are more contextual, because this is more to do with real life. Online things can be a little bit different, because like for me personally, I believe there's only so much you can do online. And another sign of spiritual bypassing is noticing the divine, the God, the universe, without noticing the human. You can't see the divine without noticing the human, because you are human. So you need to notice your humanness and then notice your divineness, the divine. And you also need to notice the humanness of everyone around you. Another one is living in the spiritual realm much of the time and not focusing on the here and now. Otherwise you'll be dead. You need to also notice that you've got a physical element to you, and that there's something happening in your life right now. And having feelings of enlightenment, I feel this divine feeling. that's a little bit challenging. We need to balance that a little bit, because we might be bypassing. And as I said, the pretense that everything is okay when things are not really working out. So those are the signs of spiritual bypassing. Then we have types of bypassing, and it is important to sometimes identify which one might be affecting you for your development, for your personal development. So the first one is blame bypass. So as we grow spiritually, we begin to see through the lies, delusions, and crazy behaviors of others, which make us angry and downhearted and frustrated. And when we face challenges, rather than take responsibility, we start blaming others. And we instill in ourselves a false sense of righteousness. We feel like we are righteous because we are doing some developmental work, and others are to blame for what's happening in us. And blame is a powerful form of procrastination, where, interestingly, we like to take responsibility for our successes, but not how we negatively feel and our negative behaviors or our self-sabotage behaviors. So when we blame others, we can delay whatever it is we want to step into or to start doing. So the suggestion is to practice the dichotomy of control and take responsibility, and to self-regulate and be answerable and accountable, because you will be measured. The second type of spiritual bypassing is the horoscope bypass. This is very fascinating, because we have people who frequently look outside themselves for help, allowing predictions and guidance to control their lives using horoscopes and psychics. And what happens when people do that is they fail to tap into their inner well springs of wisdom and strength, and they allow external predictions to control life's outcomes. So the reason why we do this, we go to psychics and for horoscope bypassing, is because we are afraid and we mistrust ourselves and our inability to make decisions and to deal with anything tough. So we ignore our traumas and the work needed to work through them by using a horoscope or a psychic to clarify a negative outcome or event, rather than introspection and reflection. So we can do astrology and horoscope as fun, just for fun, but we need to actually introspect, reflect, and work on our inner stuff. And sometimes we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need therapists, instead of asking astrologists some questions. And the prayer bypass is number 3. This is for people who pray, and there is nothing absolutely wrong with praying. I pray myself. But when we use prayer to avoid personal responsibility, to solve all our problems and issues, it can easily become limiting and misguided. And awareness of prayer is that we are given a choice. That is why some people pray, and that is why some people don't. And in that choice, we also need to take responsibility, because we are choosing that we want to pray. And whilst we can put it out to the divine, we also have the physical element of us that need to take some space and take some steps and take responsibility for some of our behaviors. So as we pray, we only see the divine sometimes, yet it helps to see the human, to see the divine, for we are human. You can't see the divine without seeing the human. Very important to explore that for people who pray, because we are human. We are brought here in these physical bodies, yes, and then we've got the spirit that lives in us, if we are people who pray. So it's important that we do the physical bit and take responsibility for our behaviors and our attitudes, and then put out whatever requests we have out there, whilst we are also aligned with what we are asking for in our behaviors, attitudes, choices, words, and thoughts and decisions. That is very important. That is very important, Mazi. I love that. You are right. Yes, you pray, you look for a sign, and also you find inspiration about what to do with yourself or the next step to take. That is how prayer works. Then sometimes also when people pray, they get in the way physically, but the way that they get in the way is that they are not aligned with what they are asking for. And the fourth spiritual bypass is intellectual. This is the use of logic and intelligence to avoid addressing emotional issues, and can be rationalization in psychology. Most people get in their heads and are clever and want to rationalize and reason everything out. And they are the same people that will end up also struggling with emotional control, because they are more focused on, we are intelligent. And when intelligence gets in the way in the form of probably looking at other people who are supposedly less intelligent, looking down on them, it becomes a form of bypass. You are better off balancing the cognitive intelligence with emotional and spiritual and social intelligence. And this type of bypass favors thinking versus being. So the rational person, the logical person is always doing. There is no time to be and relax and detach, because everything is based on doing. So therefore, we can safeguard our bodies and energy out of harm's way, the latter of which leads to minimum cognitive anesthesia. We can choose to be or experience bodily rejection, loss, hurt, risk, fear, and failure versus thinking about it. So we need to develop a relationship with our bodies as well as the mind. Very important. I have lost count now. So I think I was on number 1, 2, 3, 4. So I am on number 5. Premature transcendence. In this bypass, we try to rise above humanness and dismiss feelings, relational development, psychological issues. We can avoid ego development needs and our lives challenging emotional issues by circumventing self-development while claiming to be spiritual. If we find that we've got uncomfortable emotional reactions, we repress them, convincing ourselves that we are beyond them. And what happens is unresolved emotional issues and wounds can sabotage spiritual practice, interfere with it. We rationalize that if we put our emotions into it or bring our emotions into it, that will sabotage our spirituality. So we don't want to get involved in the emotions. But this is just a coping strategy that prolongs suffering, because they are not going to go away. No shortcut is healthy to bypass emotions, because they are bringing a message in us, and we need to listen to that message and act on it. Repressed or unfelt emotions will keep our energy stuck and disrupt our psychological growth, emotional and physical balance. And because our emotions serve as flags, indicating an opportunity for us to grow. So we need to welcome them all. Number 6, the optimistic bypass. This is forced optimism and positivity, where people love to laugh and smile. And this is because of anger phobia, or the inability again to deal with negative emotions. Optimism bypass disregards these negative emotions. So the problem is we cannot take away all our sadness, anger, fear, and other unpleasant feelings and replace them with positive thoughts just like that. We need to acknowledge them. Is it you too, Mazi? Very funny. Thanks for sharing. So we need to acknowledge these negative emotions and deal with them. Find out where they are coming from, address them, and then we can then find replacement thoughts that are lighter, softer, and less harsh. And we can also apply mindfulness and reframes and role reversals, and then apply genuine optimism while we are dealing with our inner stuff. That is the way to do it. There is nothing wrong with optimism, but if it's forced and it's trying to get rid of the negative emotions, it becomes a problem. Yeah, you've got awareness, Mazi, because my inner child thinks I cannot be ungrateful or ask for help. Awareness is key. Next stage, shift Sam. So number 7, I hope I might lose count, bear with me. The aggrandizement bypass, sorry about the pronunciation. And self-aggrandizement is the process of promoting oneself as being powerful and important. And what happens when people do that is they delude themselves and mask their deficiencies and insecurity. And that happens a lot when we probably have a following and we feel like we are very important people, and we might feel like we need to show up as a certain way. We don't want to show our weaknesses or our negative emotions. And this is common, as I say, with people who feel superior, powerful, enlightened, wealthy, and believe they have reached higher planes of existence. And these are self-proclaimed masters, spiritually awakened souls, leaders, and gurus. So what they do, these people, is they exaggerate their importance or power so that they make excuses that emotions are beneath them. But who doesn't struggle? Our struggles might be private. We do all the time. Or you were taught to never complain. It's time to change that and teach your son also that things can be done differently. Number 8, the disconnection bypass. This may surprise some. It is when someone avoids connections. They appear cold and overly detached. So they avoid feelings, they avoid family, community, religion, nature, or society. And they might want to focus on themselves. I will say something about this bypass. It has its place where it is required. Because when you have struggled through something and you want to work on yourself, it can be helpful to disconnect sometimes. I used to do that on Facebook, where I would come off maybe for 3 months and I would focus on myself. And this might not be just Facebook. You might just disconnect from society a little bit and work on your stuff, and then you come back. But that doesn't mean to say you are not talking to other people. You still do. And then you still come back. But if you continue that for a lifetime and you live like a hermit, that can be a problem. The reason why people do this is because they probably have experienced loneliness or severe physical or emotional harm or abuse in their lives, especially in childhood. So they might not want to associate with people because they are trying to protect themselves. So that can be a survival strategy. Number 8, I hope, the guru bypass. I'm a guru. So this is beneficial. I mean, when you have a guru that you follow, a motivational speaker or a spiritual teacher, and you learn from them and you grow from their concepts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it becomes a problem when you start worshipping someone. they are just human, as all of us, and as flawed as we all are. And the problem most of the time with us is that we are in this celebrity culture where we follow people so much that we start to defend them even when they do wrong things. And we start to follow every word they say, even if we might need to follow other people also and employ other concepts in our existence. I notice there are people who are stuck on a concept, and this is why I created the SIFT-SEM tool, to introduce many of these concepts out there so that they are all in one place, because one of them only does not work. We are more complex than that as human beings. We want this, that, the other. This is why I say self-care, SIFT-SEM, bedtime reflection, because I picked up all these from all these people. They were introduced by other people, but it was just about putting them all together in one place. That was all. So it's important that we don't worship people, and we just don't believe that gurus perform miracles and that they control our lives. They die just like us. They breathe, they go to the toilet. And this is something that I keep reminding people. Don't worship anyone. You can respect people, and you can respect the person on the street. You can also respect the person in a high-rise office. We are all human. We are all the same. We just have roles in this life that are different. That is all. That is all. And it's not a big deal. Number 9, I think, if not, forgive me, the venting bypass. Yeah, that's a very common one with many people venting, post on there, this happened to me, how could he do that to me, and so forth. So venting is helpful and needed to let off steam. But if it becomes a way of coping, we can get useless feedback from people who do not want to hurt our feelings. And it also interferes with our ability to experience our full range of emotions, as well as getting objective feedback. We might vent and blame and feel like victims, and we will learn nothing from the situation. So it's okay to vent for minimum periods, but SIFT-SEM and sit down and ask yourself what you are feeling, why you are feeling it, and what you can do about it. And then love on 3 levels. Parent yourself, go to others for more support, and go to the greater good and notice that you are not alone in your suffering. And do that every day. And vent to yourself most of the time. Use your journal, etc. And you need to be open to feedback to grow. Many people struggle with that. Number 10, overly sacrificing. And this is serving others out of obligation or personal responsibility to feel needed by being a do-gooder or a people pleaser. And this is not to be mistaken with charity. People sometimes do things out of charity. My charity comes in the form of the groups that I do on Facebook. That's the only gift that I can share with the world. I don't have money. I'm not ready to part with the money that I have to give to others. So this is what I give others. And we all have something that we can give to others. But when we have this sacrificing, which is characterized by blind compassion, where there are no boundaries, and we are not acting out of love, but sentencing ourselves to wearing a face showing kindness, it becomes a problem. Because what happens is that we can be do-gooders who fear confrontation, and we don't want to come across as unhelpful people. We want to come across as good spiritual people. This fear can make us avoid upsetting others, as we do not know how to create boundaries. That is the problem. Or we don't know how to say no. So unhealthy patterns can continue, and then we can become angry, and we can be resentful, but we can still be relentlessly positive. instead of being curious about the resentment that we have, and that can be now optimism bypass mixed with this overly sacrificing. The belief is that tolerance means spiritual correctness. And I must say overly sacrificing can also be it's a very good example of a codependent trait. It can also happen in relationships. Not only in serving others, but serving others can also be in relationships. We can be do-gooders and actually not meet our own needs or not have our own needs met while we are trying to meet the needs of others. Number 11 or 12, I'm not sure now. I think I've lost count. Compensatory identity. And when we have this spiritual bypassing, it involves covering up a lack of identity or a lack of self-worth by becoming a spiritual healer or a spiritual practitioner. I am fascinated by this one, and it's something that I keep retreating in myself to monitor, because it's easy to fall into this trap of trying to heal other people when you are not healed. So what people do is they have a tendency of, they have maybe gone through a crisis and they see someone helping other people and they love the concept so much, so they create their own page, they create their own business, they create something to help others. There is nothing wrong with that. The only problem is, have you also done your work? Because what people do, what I notice is that they don't have any tools for themselves, but they are healing others with tools, but they haven't addressed their stuff. So when they are struggling in themselves, they go and try and help others. So it's like a distraction, healing others. And rather than do the inner work to address their low self-worth, because it comes from a low place of low self-worth and not feeling good enough. So they become a coach or a healer. And the reason is because they've got a problem with harsh self-judgment. And you might find that their spiritual practice might be dry and compartmentalized. So I mean, it's not the only outcome, or it's not the outcome of everyone in this situation, but it is possible, because the problem is they lack integration with their overall life functions. Their practice lacks integration with their overall life functions because they cannot practice what they are preaching. They can give you concept. There are some amazing people out there who can share with you an amazing concept. I can do sift some with you, like, oh my God, do it like this, but I won't be able to do it myself, on myself and in my life. I'm not able to apply it. So that's something to watch for, you know, one-sided, this compensatory bypassing for coaches and healers. And then the next one, as I told you, I've lost count, forgive me, one-sided spirituality. So this is when people or someone believes in absolute truth over relative truth. So what I mean is, this is like a one-size approach. And symptoms include black and white thinking, such as labeling other people as sinners for specific acts that one has been taught to believe are absolute evils. So it favors impersonal over holistic. It doesn't look at the person as a whole. It just says there's a relative truth out there. So where a holistic approach would work for an individual, we apply generalizations. Someone might feel that there's no need to explore any self-improvement work because they are no worse than anyone else. That is also another form of one-sided spirituality. So those are the 14, I think. I know them as 14, but you never know how many I've given you so far. 14 types of spiritual bypassing to watch for. There are more, but I put them in the system tool. I don't know how many I put in there. So how do we stop this problem? Because it is very important for our growth. Spiritual bypassing, because it hounds us every day if we are not careful. Number one, be aware of your bypassing tendencies. Where are you ignoring emotions? Where are you ignoring developmental work? In what way? There is nothing called a bad emotion that you are trying to avoid feeling, because we cannot get through human experiences without feeling strong emotions of anger, of pain, anxiety, or grief. That's what makes us human. So the important thing is we need to address those emotions. It is important to identify these bypassing patterns, your own specific bypassing patterns, and identify when you are doing it. Develop curiosity about why and how you are bypassing and what you are finding hard to acknowledge, because you have anger, jealousy, rage inside. And also find out where you learned that these emotions are not okay. Some people learn it in church, where everything is it has to be a certain way. You don't talk about bad emotions, or what we call negative emotions. And what you need to do is to start accepting those emotions and start emotional healing work. We have the system tool to address your emotions, any of them. It doesn't matter which bypass, it doesn't matter which problem you have, you can use that tool. Develop curiosity about the why and the how you are bypassing and what you are finding hard to acknowledge, as I said. And be open-minded and have radical honesty, self-acceptance, humility, and self-knowledge, which are a requirement for true spirituality. Welcome the fact that you are a flawed human in order to take steps towards growth and expansion. Explore your dark side and light side in your spiritual activities and commitments, instead of having blind faith and getting involved before asking questions to grow. So avoid this blind faith in saying things will work out. Yes, things will work out, we know that, but you also want to first acknowledge what you are feeling. We know that, and we want you to keep saying things will work out. But there is something happening right now. You are triggered, you are sad, you are upset. So what have you done about it before you can say things will work out? Or you can say things will work out, yet I also want to address how I'm feeling and then parent myself and keep moving forward and wait for things to work out. That is a better way of approaching it, I feel. And identify where your beliefs and behaviors do not align. Because what happens with spiritual bypassing is there is no alignment of beliefs and behaviors. What you really believe within, deep down, is quite different from how you show up. And you can show up with denial because the truth will be painful. And you are trying to avoid reality by creating your own false reality. That all is well, but you are suffering within. There's no congruence. There is no alignment between you and you. Inner child work and shadow work can help you identify behaviors that do not add up without self-shame or a delusion of perfection. You are not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be. I make errors all the time. And when I look back on them, I see the human, I'm learning from that human where I used to want to be a perfectionist. We cannot be perfect because we are only human. And you need to learn to solicit honest feedback from others and from people around you and to learn to accept that feedback for you to grow. It might be hard to hear, but when you accept it, it will help you to grow. Also, the other helpful part of spiritual bypassing is because we are bypassing emotions. We need to get out of the head and go down, drop down in our bodies, which makes us feel rather than intellectualize or keep thinking, doing all the time. We need to be rather than do sometimes or most of the time. Face and feel your pain of discomfort with the truth you discover and the uncertainty of life and negative emotions. So we normally bypass to avoid testing painful emotions such as hatred, rage, terror, anger, and grief. So we can enjoy a sparkly spiritual high, which is ultimately short-lived because we don't want to face inner pain. But then the problem is it will show up somewhere, that pain, if it's not addressed. If we face inner pain, we can have lasting joy, peace, and fulfillment. It is not easy to face fear and pain and to step out of the comfort zone, which is why I can understand that many people would rather resort to a spiritual practice than doing healing work. But the pain will still remain and will still need to be dealt with. This is why in our adulthood, we are dealing with the impact of trauma that happened ages ago when we were little children, because we didn't manage to deal with that pain. This is why we still have to deal with the pain of toxic relationships from 20 years ago or so, because then we didn't address them. They just don't go away. And if we don't address those emotions, what happens is they will turn up in some ways and will not live a quality life. So let's get on this train of healing to stop spiritual bypassing, to address spiritual bypassing so that we can live a comfortable quality life. And as I say, we have a SIFT-SEM tool in Friends Abroad. And what happens is people avoid healing work, but it doesn't take a long time to sit with your emotions. If it becomes practice, it's the same time that it takes you to sit down and have a meal, just to set aside that time to address how you are feeling, why you felt it, and just parenting yourself. I love you, I hear you, you know, what we are going to do is 1, 2, 3. It's very simple things. And when you get used to it, it becomes a way of life. And when it becomes a way of life, what happens consequently is that at some point you don't even need a long time. You can just scan yourself when you feel triggered. What am I feeling? Oh, there we go again. Okay. What do I do now? I love you, inner child. I know what's going on. I feel this, this hotness on my face. And so I love you. I care about you. And I'll do my best for you. What would you do for a child in your situation? And do a cathartic shake. Shake it off. And then you assess yourself and you have made some plans. When I live here, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to accept this, but also I don't know where they are coming from. So I'm going to do what is best for me. And then long term, what can I do? And then you've got solutions and you move forward. In the process, you are learning decision making. You are learning to parent yourself. You are learning to be self-reliant. And you are also learning to rely on others to support you, because on the second level you'll be loved, and you are also learning to be there for the greater good. Many of us, sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what am I doing for others that who will not give me anything back in return? Because it is an important part of life. We owe, and we need to give someone something. I hope that was helpful, and I hope you continue to work on yourselves, and I hope you look into this spiritual bypassing. There's more information in this SIFT-SEM toolkit about spiritual bypassing and cognitive distortions. And that is very important because those are some of the signs of our trauma. Very strong signs of our trauma and our childhood conditioning and upbringing. Quality life before relationships. And I'll see you soon. Thanks, Mazi, and Admire, and anyone else who was watching. Bye-bye. Thank you, Maz. You're so welcome. Awareness is really key. It's powerful, isn't it? Yeah, we need to talk about that inner child. Bye bye.